Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Heroes Like You podcast, where we explore the lives of people who have overcome adversity in their lives and have gone on to achieve success, and where we learn how we can do the same. My name is Joe Belliston, and today's hero is Austen Williams. In 2014, Austen was crowned Mrs. America, and she's been able to go on and do a lot of good things as a result of that. I was first introduced to Austen when I was doing some post-production work for the TV show Relative Race. This is a fun and often moving show where 4 teams get together and they race across the country in pursuit of $50,000. Along the way, they're meeting relatives that they've never met before. Some of these relatives include siblings and even parents that these contestants have never seen before. In season 4, Austen and her father went on the show and ended up winning the whole thing. I'm really excited for you to meet Austen and hear her story. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy my conversation with former Mrs. America, Austen Williams. Well, Austen, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And for those who may not know you, you are an actor, a singer, a dancer. You've been a model, a public speaker. You're a business owner, a philanthropist, a wife, a mother, a fighter. And in 2014, you were crowned Mrs. America. And I'm sure I've missed a few things, but you weren't always all of these things. Take us back to the beginning of your journey and talk to us about what life was like for you growing up.
Sure. So I am an only child, and I am a daughter of 2 scientists who are also performers, which sounds very peculiar, but it made for a very peculiar upbringing, and it also made it really cool. So my mom worked in radiological information and technology, and my father, he was an engineer, and he's a summer guy, so he's done some of this and some of that. He's also been a chef, and he's worked in construction and done all kinds of things. And so I grew up in a household that was very works-based, perform, be excellent, and be smart, and be pretty, and be funny, and be kind. And that made me very well-rounded and a good person in general, but it was a lot of pressure. So I kind of grew up thinking that in order for me to be successful, I had to kind of fit into this box that had been created for me. And that was, I guess, amplified by the fact that when I was 3, I suppose. When I was 3, I told my mom that I wanted to be on The Cosby Show with Rudy. And my mom was an actress as well. So she had, at that period of time, she had a commercial running for a big bank. And one night while we were watching The Cosby Show, my mom's commercial came on. And in my 3-year-old mind, I threw a full-blown temper fit because I thought that she was on the TV with Rudy. And I asked her if I could be on the TV with Rudy, and she went without me. How dare she do such a thing? So after that, my mom went, oh, she's really serious about this. And so I started performing when I was 4. So I've been working as a model, actor, singer, dancer professionally since I was 4. And I worked in New York and LA and Texas, and I've been afforded opportunities to travel all over the world doing that, performing. But again, with my presuppositions of having to be excellent and having to perform, it just kind of, again, amplified this, what I call now, hindsight bias, this unnecessary desire to be perfect. And to be what people expected me to be all the time. And, behind closed doors, I did not have a perfect life. So my parents were married and divorced twice. And yes, 2 times.
To each other?
That correctly. They were married and divorced to each other twice. Yes.
You don't hear that story every day.
Yeah, it was odd. And my dad had, he had some substance abuse problems that were challenging for my mom and me as, a byproduct of, just being their kid. And so, it was it was hard. It was hard having the family come together and then be torn apart. And when, my parents were together, it was not awesome. And so, you know, trying to be perfect while things are not perfect made me feel like I just couldn't keep it together. And fast forward to when I was a senior in high school, this desire to be perfect and trying to have it all together, it caused me to have some unhealthy beliefs that about myself and what I deserved, that put me in a position to end up being sexually abused. And so after that, my life changed a lot. I had some pretty severe PTSD, and I'm not saying that it was my fault. My abuse was not my fault. So I want to make that clear. But what happened was the person was a family friend, and he knew that he knew about my home life. He knew about my problems, and he used those things against me. And he ended up using faith against me too. So I became a really nasty, passionate atheist. And the smart, I know things, and I'm going to use my words to fight with you about things, kind of atheist. And my life just got more challenging from there. So a couple years after that, I came to know Jesus, and my life just kind of whirlwind changed out of nowhere. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, working full-time as a model and actress. I ended up moving to Texas, and I started working full-time at a church, and I ended up going to seminary, and my life just completely changed, because what I realized through my faith was that it was okay for me to not be perfect. I don't have to be perfect. It's okay for me to be broken, and that God loved me for me. And that was such a huge breakthrough for me. It just gave me permission to just unapologetically be myself, which was freedom that I had never had before. So that's my whole life in a nutshell.
Wow.
Everything since then has stemmed from those things.
Wow. There's a lot there. I want to talk about a couple things. You said you came to a point where you discovered that you didn't need to be perfect. Now, what does that look like? Because I think a lot of us want to be perfect. There are perfectionists, but all of us want to do the best we can, right? So when you say, I realized I didn't need to be perfect, that doesn't mean you didn't stop trying to be better. It doesn't mean you stopped trying to be the best you can. Is that right? What did that look like for you when you came to that realization?
Absolutely. That's such a powerful question, because I think that we were made to be our best and most authentic selves. But what we often do is we have our presuppositions and our expectations, some of which we have put on ourselves, others of which have been put on us. And we think this is what I have to be, or this is what this person has told me I'm supposed to be. And a lot of times it can even come from other people who have our best interest at heart. So when our parents are teaching us, to be kind, to be good, to have a good work ethic, like these things that my parents taught me, they were good things. But good things, if not handled with care, can turn into bad things, and can add unnecessary stress and pressure to things that were intended to be good. And so for me, I think that striving to be better means always working to be better today than you were yesterday, and to be better tomorrow than you are today. It's just about growth and doing your very best, and choosing to do your very best at each and every moment, and recognizing that once you've done your best, there's grace for everything else. I believe that God can fill the gaps. That's something that I often say. God will fill the gaps. So all I can do is what I can do, and everything else will work itself out. Perfection and striving for perfection is going, I have to have it exactly right every single time. And there's no grace in that space, and there's no freedom in that space. So when I say I don't have to be perfect, what I mean is all I have to do is the best that I can do today in this moment, and everything else, there's grace for that.
Yeah, and you have to be satisfied with that, right? You have to have that strong mindset that once you've done your best, that's all anybody can ask of you, and that's all that's required, right?
Yeah, and sometimes like your best is not to me. Sometimes your best is not satisfactory. Like sometimes I did the very best I could do. Sometimes I tell my children, I say, I tried hard and I believed in myself and I still failed.
Right.
But I failed forward. I learned from it. I grew, but I did the best that I could. And there was nothing else that I could have done in that moment that could have made me better or that would have changed my circumstances. But as I move forward, I can take from that experience and take that as an opportunity to do better the next time.
Right.
So I think that's what striving to be better is supposed to look like.
Yeah. I like this subject because I think it's a big problem in our society right now. I can see it in myself. I see it in my family. I see it in my kids. I see it all around me that if we don't do what we believe to be perfect or do a job perfectly, then we fall apart and we'll either give up or we'll just beat ourselves up so much. So there is, I think what you're saying is completely right, but is there something we can do to change, to shift that mindset? You know, there's a lot of people talking about, you know, saying declarations and being positive. Mm-hmm. What's something specific that you could, that you would say helped you to really make that mind shift? Because I think it takes a lot of work. It's not just saying, okay, now I'll be okay with my best, but there's got to be something to train your mind to make it strong in those moments when you feel like you failed.
Absolutely. I say proper perspective promotes proper praise. So the only way to always have this mindset of moving forward is if you have proper perspective. And often if we look at different things, we will see things differently. So I always put myself in a position to look at different things. So I might have an initial thought or have an initial reaction to something. And then I go, okay, now let's look at this from a different angle. And in that regard, it gives me an opportunity to look at different things and to see different perspectives on whatever the situation or circumstance may be. You know, I think that it's really important to do that for yourself and just as you live. It's a way in which you can do, what I call an emotional inventory. So, you know, just figuring out where you are, what it is that you're thinking, what it is you're feeling and believing in those moments, and kind of deciphering through what is true and what you just made up in your head. Because sometimes we just make stuff up. We just totally make stuff up.
False realities.
Yes, false realities. And, you know, if we look at different things, it's easier for us to identify what those, as you call, false realities are. And then we can move forward from there.
I love that. Take an emotional inventory. You mentioned that there was a lot of pressure on you as a kid to perform to the very best, right? And as parents, I think we want that in our children. But it sounds like it had a negative effect on you in some regards. How would you change that as a parent now to your children? You want them to be the best they can be. What's your different approach so that they don't go through the same thing you went through?
You know, one of the things that I really love about my childhood is that my parents really afforded me opportunities to do so many things. So I've had a lot of experiences doing a lot of things, and I've been able to excel at those things because I had those opportunities. But I think a great deal of that pressure manifested itself in academics. I went to very competitive elementary, middle, and high school. So my elementary and middle school was nationally recognized for academic achievement. My high school is one of the top 10 high schools in the country, and it's all honors and AP, very, again, performance driven. And a lot of the pressure that I experienced was not necessarily anything that my parents did. I think that my parents were working to give me the best opportunities that they could. And they did. And as I look back on those things, I'm very thankful for that because they equipped me with a mind that works and they taught me how to think. So that's an invaluable thing. However, what I have done as a parent, I have 3 children of my own now. And I remember my mom saying, you know, Austen, you should try and get them into, you know, this school and that school, these schools that I had gone to when I was younger. And I said to my mom, I could get them into these schools, and I know that they could test. These are schools that you have to test into. They could test into the schools. They're smart enough to do those things, but I just choose to let them be free. I don't want them to experience the academic pressure that I did.
Mm.
And and I think sometimes as parents, recognizing that our children they don't have to compete so young is freedom for them. Like, it gives them the opportunity to just, I'm going to go and do my best, and I'm going to learn how to read and enjoy math and science, and it's not so performance driven.
Not so much pressure, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I really, looking back on it, I can't think of like a time where my mother or my father said something to me that made me think that I had to do well. Like, you have to be the best in your class, or, of course they wanted me to make good grades, and I did. I was an excellent student, but, it wasn't anything that they did that caused me to feel this pressure.
Right.
This was pressure that I put on myself. And I think that I put it on myself because I was in a naturally competitive environment children, we are competitive people. We will compare ourselves to our peers, and we will want to strive to be at their level, so to speak. And I think I did that to myself. And as a child, not knowing how to manage that, I think is what led to my pressure.
Yeah.
So, I think being aware of where your children are and what they're experiencing is one of the most helpful things that we can do as parents. Just making sure that even the perspective that they are gaining is proper perspective that is edifying to them, that will make them wiser and stronger and contributing members of society.
Yeah, I love that. How important is play and recreation to children of all ages, from 3 to 83?
I think play and recreation is one of the most important things that a person can do. And, my husband and I, we encourage our children to play as much as they can. They love running around outside and climbing trees. And I have a almost 3-year-old. We call her the wildling because she is wild, and and we find ways to play together. For me, especially, I'm busy. I have 3 children, and I run a nonprofit, and I have my own business, and I have a husband, and life is just crazy. And I need an outlet for my stress too. So I take karate 3 to 4 times a week. And it gives me an opportunity I say I get to hit things and yell. And
Who doesn't need that?
Right. It's so cathartic. It's amazing. And so, it has given me a space to kind of release the tensions that I built up throughout the week. So that is my play, and it's fun. It is so much fun, and it is some of the best times of my week. So find a hobby and do it.
Yeah. So yours is karate.
Karate.
I think that's really important to find, just like you said, find a hobby, find something you love to do, and make time for it. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about Mrs. America. In 2014, you decided to compete for Mrs. Texas.
Yes.
What was behind that decision? You talk about you're so busy, you have so much going on. Why did you decide to do that?
It was an accident. It really was. When I tell this story, people... Well, this is what happened. So when my husband and I got married, this is not in our wedding vows, but we had this conversation before we got married, and it was a part of our vows. I told him, I said, babe, you have to tell me the truth. Like, if I start looking crazy, you need to be like, babe, I love you. You're letting yourself go a little. And then I will have some motivation to like get my life together. And so after I had my second child, things moved around like you would not believe. And my husband, one day, we were living in Texas. And I don't know if you've ever been in Texas during the summertime, but it's really hot. It makes you want to turn your life around. And so I was wearing shorts and a tank top, and my husband was like, babe, I have something to tell you. And I was like, what? He was like, it's really serious, and I don't want you to get upset. And I was like, what are you about to tell me? I was a little bit like freaking out. Oh my goodness, what is this man about to tell me? And he was like, you have cellulite on your thighs. And I was like, thank you, babe. I had no idea that I had cellulite on my thighs. Yes, I did. I absolutely knew that. But it was great motivation because I thought, well, nothing like the threat of swimsuit competition to make you get your life together. So I signed up for Mrs. Texas specifically just to get back in shape after I had my second kid. That was my only motivation. And I intended it only to be like a threat to myself. Like I was like, okay, I'm going to do this pageant, but then I didn't actually intend to go through with it. I intended to not do the pageant. I just wanted like to tell my brain,
Right.
you're going to do this pageant.
Had you any experience in the past of pageants?
I did. I was actually Miss South Carolina Teen USA
Okay.
and competed at the National Miss Teen USA pageant in 2002.
Okay.
So I had competed before, but that was a very long time ago. This was not a thing at all.
Well, so you decide to do it, you win Mrs. Texas, and then you go on to Mrs. America, and you win that as well. Was that an accident too?
One of my life mottos comes from the Bible, and it's from 1 Corinthians 12:7-10. And in this particular part of the Bible, the Apostle Paul is talking about this weakness that he had, and he said he begged God to take it from him, and God said, "My grace is sufficient for you. In your weakness, my work is made perfect in you." And so for me, I live in this world where I kind of see through a lens of brokenness and grace. So when I see brokenness, when I see weakness, I see strength and perfection because I don't have to be perfect, because in my weakness, God's work is made perfect in me. And in your weakness, God's work is made perfect in you. So in this space, I always just look for weaknesses. And when I see like things going wrong, I start getting really excited because that's when I know that God is doing his very best work.
Ooh, I love that.
At Mrs. America, it was like even the time leading up to Mrs. America, things were kind of just like going wrong left and right, and it was a whole hot mess express. And I remember telling my director, she was totally losing it, like, we have to get these things done, what are we going to do? And I'm like, it's okay, I'm going to win. She was like, what do you mean you're going to win? I'm like, all these things are going wrong, and when things go wrong, I win. So I'm just letting you know now that I'm about to go to Mrs. America and I'm going to win this whole pageant because all these things are going wrong.
What a great perspective to have.
And that's what happened. And so, yeah, it's also what happened right before relative race. I remember texting my producer and saying, all these things are going wrong, and when things go wrong, I win. So just so you know, I'm going to go to relative race and I'm going to win because all these things are going wrong.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that's just the way my life is set up. So...
Well, Austen, from the outside, it looks like Austen Williams always has fortune smiling upon her. You're the winner of Mrs. America. You're pretty. You're talented. You mentioned relative race. You go on a reality TV show and end up winning, along with $50,000. However, you've also touched on that life isn't free of opposition for anyone. And I want you, if you would, dive in a little deeper to those things that you mentioned earlier. In your teenage years or even younger, what did life look like for you, for example, after you were sexually abused? And how did you get through that? Would you mind just taking us through that dark time in your life?
Sure. So I actually wouldn't say that my dark times began with my sexual abuse. I would say that my dark time began when I was in middle school. I would say when I was probably about 12. So when I was 12, almost 13, my parents had they had gotten remarried the second time, and they had gotten separated at this point in time and leading up into the second divorce. And my dad, his problems would just be brought home. And I remember he was an alcoholic, and I remember I used to hear him opening the beer cans, and the sound used to just drive me deeper into my hole. And I remember the first time I started thinking about killing myself was around that time. So, I say it very plainly, because I believe in calling things what they are. And I believe that when we kind of skirt around things and try and dance around them, it gives those negative things power that they don't deserve. So when talking about like my sexual abuse, or alcoholism or suicide, these very difficult topics, I tend to call them exactly what they are so that they don't have power. Because what I realized through, being depressed and going through years of depression and being suicidal and looking at my face, there was a period of time in high school where every morning I would wake up in the morning and I would get ready for school, and I would like go to wash my face and brush my teeth and put on my makeup, and I would say I hate my face. Every day I woke up and I said I hate my face, and I did. And that hatred, that self-hatred was so much deeper than my face. Like I just hated myself. And all of these things were rooted in my not understanding who I was made to be and my own value. So I say that I hit rock bottom and realized that God was my rock at the bottom. He was the one that was holding me up, and he was my strength. And understanding that these things that had happened to me did not define me, were key moments of change for me. So as I look back on my life and I think about these very difficult things, finding my power lie in recognizing who I was supposed to be, who I could be, who I was made to be, and not being afraid to embrace her. And I think that a lot of times, especially when we're in our darkest spaces, we look at our circumstances or our situations or those things that have been done to us, and we think that there's nothing past them.
Right.
There's nothing on the other side of that struggle. And what I have seen on this side of it, as I look back time and time again, was grace and mercy and opportunities for me to be changed. And because of the changes that I've had, and because of or the changes that I've experienced and the experiences that I've had in and of themselves, I have been equipped in such a way to do amazing work today. So, I think as an example, people often, when I talk about my sexual abuse, people say, "I'm so sorry that happened to you." And I'm not sorry it happened to me. I don't want to experience it again, but I'm not sorry it happened to me, because since that time, I've worked in youth ministry, and I have helped more people more girls, specifically girls and women, more than I can count, have confided in me for the first time. I was abused and I've never told anybody. I've been carrying this burden alone for all of these years. It's destroyed my life. I felt like I could never survive. But now, since I've seen what you have been able to accomplish, even after your circumstances, I know I can make it. Those moments make me not sorry that this happened to me, because every time you experience a trial, it's an opportunity for you to become more of who you were made to be. And these things might happen to us, but they are not who we are. These are things that happen, and life is hard sometimes, but we have the power to stand up and to stand in our power and to step over the stumbling blocks that have been put before us. We don't have to fall down, even when those things are intended to make us fall. So for me, I think mental toughness and deep passion for purpose have been the things that have helped me overcome my greatest challenges and find hope in opportunities for the future.
I am so grateful that you shared all of that. Thank you for being vulnerable, opening up, and sharing those personal stories with us. There's a lot of people that will benefit from that. And I think it's interesting, you talk about depression and suicide. I was reading recently that the need for mental health assistance in our schools has increased dramatically over the last several years. In fact, it's estimated that no fewer than 1 in 5 students currently need mental health assistance. And what I think is interesting about that, if you take your story, for example, I would venture to guess that Austen showed up to school and nobody really had an idea of what she was going through or that she had suicidal thoughts. She's excelling in school, she's excelling in all these other extracurricular activities, and nobody really knew that she needed help. Now, it was brought to my attention recently that there are 2 teenagers that live near me that have recently attempted suicide. What are some things that we can do to help people who are going through these very low, dark times, even though we may not know it?
I mentioned something earlier that I kind of think as a speaker, one of the things that I talk about is media influence. Growing up in the entertainment industry, I'm able to see how media impacts our culture a little bit differently than some other people perhaps can. And one of the things that I see when I see TV or when I watch TV and I watch these films and I see this culture of capturing celebrities is this perpetuation of this idea that we have to have it all together all the time.
Right.
So uh, to answer your question head on, I think that one of the best things that we can do in order to support one another as a community member and as a community in general is to give one another the space to actually be where we are. When I speak about emotional inventories, I say this a faith-based context. So, a lot of us have heard of the story of Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve, they're in the garden, they eat the fruit, and God comes into the garden. And the first thing that God says to Adam and Eve, I typically will just pose this question and people will come up with all kinds of guesses. And God's first question to Adam and Eve when he returned to the garden after they ate the fruit was, "Where are you?" And that question was posed not because God did not know where they were. God is God. He knew exactly where they were, but he wanted them to know where they were. I call it the location question. And I think that a lot of times we don't give ourselves the space to answer that location question. And in addition to that, we don't allow other people to be where they are and to move forward. So the best way for us to support one another, the best way I believe to, meet people where they are as it pertains to mental illness, as it pertains to depression and suicide, and just general well-being, is to give people permission to be where they are. Give people permission to, when we say, "Hey, how are you doing?" for them to go, "I'm not doing so great today, and this is why," and for us to care. A lot of times we'll just offer out "I'm fine," or "I'm good," even when we're not good, even when I'm not good. And that gives this false idea of perfection and okayness that prevents people from actually recognizing that they don't have to be perfect and that it's okay for them to be broken because God loves them exactly where they are.
And so should we, right?
And so should we, absolutely. So if we could get to that space where we legitimately are giving people permission to be broken, then they don't have to bear that burden alone. And that's what community looks like to me.
I love that. How often do we ask somebody how they are and they say, "Oh, I'm not doing too good today"? We don't hear that too often, do we? I do want to ask, since you brought up media, in your opinion, how is media, technology, smartphones and the like, how is that affecting our youth in this generation, either positively or negatively? I remember in high school, I never had a cell phone, and I probably knew 2 people that did. I can't imagine going to school today, whether it's high school or junior high or even elementary school, there are smartphones now, always having to present myself as perfect for fear of having a camera on me at all times. I can't imagine that kind of pressure.
Exactly.
Is this helping or hindering our youth today, or is it contributing to the mental health issues that we're seeing?
I do think that it does contribute negatively, but I also think that there's a lot of good out there. I think that more people have opportunities to have a voice. What I don't love in social media right now is that oftentimes we give power to voices that are not promoting positive information or positive perspective, and that's a choice. We we receive that which we hear. So like we will take in all that negative stuff that we listen to. And in that regard, as a parent, I try to protect my children from that. One of the things that and my children are almost 9, almost 7, almost 3. So my 9 and 7 year old, my 9 year old starting to go, Mom, when am I going to get a phone? And I've been telling them for years, like, y'all will have one phone and you will share it, and it will be a flip phone, because there's just no need for our children to have this, really what I believe is a fake connection to the world in this regard. Like, that's not doing them any favors. So I tell them straight up, this is what this is going to be. Y'all are going to have one phone. You're going to share the phone. And in my opinion, my children are still young. So obviously I'm not an expert in this area, but I think those kinds of restrictions, and also like parents knowing you have the authority to have dominion over your children's phones. Like, that's not your child's phone. That's your phone that you let your child borrow. And that means you can read every text. You can look at all those pictures. You are in charge of stewarding these children, and you're in charge of them. And that's not invading their privacy, in my opinion. In my opinion, that's shepherding them.
Right.
I believe that one of the ways that we can protect our children is by being intentional about what it is that they are putting into their bodies, putting into their minds, what they're seeing. And while on the one hand, the internet has done great things for connecting us, the other hand is like you said, our children are being bombarded with this idea that they have to have it all together all the time. And so as for me in my house, we're working to prevent that just by not allowing them they're not going to have a Facebook for quite some time. They're not going to have full-time access to these apps, that will make it so that they feel like they have to be together all the time, because again, that leads to this kind of pressure that is just not necessary.
Yeah. And I'm sure they're fully functional in society and not weird or anything like that, right?
Yes, they are. They're not little leprechauns.
Yeah. Well, Austen, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking time to share your story and your heart and your wisdom with us today. I know there's a lot of people that will benefit from it, just like I have. So on behalf of everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, before we let you go, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about this cause that you're involved in, Shake the Shackles, what that is, how you're involved, and what you guys are doing to help people.
So when I was Mrs. America, my platform was Shake the Shackles Human Trafficking Awareness. And I was afforded opportunities to travel to about 35 states in the U.S. and 3 countries talking about human trafficking, raising awareness about human trafficking, the realities of it, and how everyday people can get involved in the fight against modern day slavery. And since that time, I mentioned earlier, when people talk to me about my abuse and they say, I'm sorry that happened to you. Again, this is another one of those moments where I go, I'm not sorry, because the reason why I got involved in human trafficking is because I found out what many of these survivors of trafficking go through, how many times a day they are abused. And I thought about my own experiences, and my heart broke for them, and I wanted to fight for them because I'm a fighter. That's why I do karate.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've come to realize that you don't have to do everything to fight human trafficking. You only have to do one thing. And that one thing is just doing whatever it is you're good at and using whatever that is in order to fight human trafficking. For me, it was using my voice and my platform. I ended up working with a nonprofit organization called the Jubilee Market, and they used fashion to fight human trafficking. The founder of the organization, she was a seamstress, and she made clothes out of fabric that was made by freed survivors of human trafficking. And last year, she retired and I became the president and executive director of that organization. So I look back at my own life, at my struggles, at some of my most painful times. And today and every day as I do my work, I see good coming from something that was intended to be bad. So I think that, my experience just even in this everyday work is an example of beauty from ashes and just opportunities to learn and grow and to fight for the least of these. Because if we aren't willing to fight for one another, then what are we here for?
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for your mission. I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I've kept you over time already, and I know you have things to do, so we'll let you go. But I really appreciate you taking time to share your story and insights with us. We're better for it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Austen was so fun to talk to, and I think she had a lot of really, really good points. How many times have we thought when something is going terribly wrong, well, this is great, because when something goes wrong, that means something good is coming. I know some people who, even when things are going right, they think, oh no, everything's going right. That just means something terrible is about to happen. Well, Austen has a different mindset, and I think that's awesome. She also talked about how things that have happened to us in the past don't have to define us. They don't have to affect our future. And there's a lot of examples of people who have done that, of people who have grown up in orphanages, or who have been abused, or who have come from less than desirable circumstances. They have gone on to accomplish great things. They don't think of themselves as the victim. They don't let those terrible things define the rest of their life. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us today. I hope you've been encouraged, inspired, motivated to overcome any challenges that come your way. A big thanks to Austen Williams for taking time to share her story, and a big, big thanks to you, the listener. I really appreciate it, and I hope it's been worthwhile. My name is Joe Belliston. It's a great day to be alive. We'll see you next time, and God bless.